The long wait is over. We have reached the greatest day of the year. Mets fans, happy opening day.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. It's here, folks. The Mets will play a baseball game that counts today, opening day. It's one of the happiest days of the year. This is a time where every fan base can find something to be optimistic about. If your team doesn't have high hopes for the season, there's still new players that you're excited about, young prospects getting their first shot. If you have a fan base like the Mets, where this is a team with World Series aspirations, this is a day where the Mets have 0 losses in that column. There is nothing but hope and optimism that this is the year the New York Mets will get the monkey off their back and win the World Series. It's also a year where the Mets are coming off a great run in 2024, paired with the beginning of a new era of Mets baseball with Juan Soto. He will play his first game that matters on a 15-year contract today, and that is thrilling. Where we're going to open up the show, though, is looking at the Mets opening day roster, which came with a couple of surprises. I'm going to put it up on the screen here for those of you watching on YouTube. You look at the rotation, no surprises there. We knew it was going to be Kodai Senga, David Peterson, Clay Holmes, Griffin Canning, and Tyler McGill. Not actually in that order. Instead, it's going to be Clay Holmes starting on opening day, Tyler McGill starting game 2, Griffin Canning starting game 3, Peterson game 4, Senga rounding out the rotation, giving him as much time as possible to get ready for his first regular season start since last July. The bullpen, Edwin Diaz, AJ Minter does make the team without having to start the year on the injured list. That was a question mark. We now know he is good to go. Ryan Stanek, no surprises. Reed Garrett, Jose Budo, Danny Young. The two final pieces of the bullpen, Max Kranick and Huascar Brazoban, we thought it was going to be one or the other. It ends up being both, because if you look down at the injured list, Paul Blackburn joins Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea, as well as Jeff McNeil and Francisco Alvarez, as players that will start the season on the IL. Now, Blackburn, he has knee soreness that required an injection, and they said that the injection is taken well. They expect him to be shut down for 7 to 10 days, and it sounds like he'll be good to resume throwing right after that and potentially get off the IL as soon as possible after his 15-day stint, which would put him right in line with being able to return to the rotation as that sixth starter when the Mets need it on April 18th. It's kind of one of those injuries that works out almost too well for the Mets, where it's like, man, that's nice. That's nice how it worked out. You don't want to see a guy go down, but I think the Mets were going to sort of struggle to find a role for Paul Blackburn until they needed that sixth starter. And instead of having a long man in your bullpen that was going to handcuff you in some ways, because when Blackburn pitched, they were going to have to let him go. They were going to have to let him get as many pitches as possible to keep him stretched out for when he would return to the rotation. That sort of puts you in a point where you're pitching a man down in the bullpen. Now, the Mets will get there at some point this year where they will have a 6-man rotation and their bullpen will have to go with 7 instead of 8. But now for the early part of the season where your starting pitchers might not be going as deep into games, you have both Huascar Brazoban and Max Kranick to give you bulk relief along with Jose Budo. So the Mets are very covered in that bullpen now that Blackburn starts the season on the IL. The other interesting note, if you look at this graphic, I have an asterisk listed next to Luis Angel Acuña's name because when David Stern spoke with the media today, he did not confirm Acuña's place on the roster. He said Hayden Sanger has made the team as the backup catcher. He confirmed that Brett Beatty had made the team and all the other decisions were already made. Your infield is Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, Mark Vientos, and Brett Beatty as your primary starter at second base. Your outfield, Juan Soto, Brandon Nimmo, Jose Siri, your likely starters. Tyrone Taylor, your fourth outfielder, Starling Marte, Jesse Winker, making up a DH platoon. Acuña is the backup utility infielder who should be platooning with Brett Beatty. But again, when David Stern spoke with the media today, he said, well, we're going to take this down to the wire. And he did not come out and say Acuna had made the team. It's a little bit interesting, and I think this could have been for multiple reasons. One of the reasons could have been the fact that Luis Angel Acuna maybe didn't necessarily earn this roster spot the way the Mets would have liked. You had the Mets captain, as we talked about a couple days ago, coming out in an article on MLB.com saying that Luis Angel Acuna carries himself like he doesn't care. Like, spring training didn't matter, and he needs the pressure of the big lights of Major League Baseball to get the best out of him. Now, I think that was Lindor trying to speak to the fact that Acuna is going to be great once he gets there, and that you should have faith in what he's able to do in the big moments. But at the same time, that does not speak volumes of someone who is, fighting and clawing their way to make an opening day roster. So I think this could have been partially a way to send a little bit of a message to Acuna. I think that could be one of the sides of this. I also think the Mets might have explored the waiver market to really see if they could find a different right-handed infielder. As David Stern said, they were going to exhaust all their options and let this go down to the wire. Maybe there was a name that could have trickled out that would have made sense for the Mets to jump on, that would have allowed them to put Acuna in Syracuse where he could develop a little bit more, get more playing time. But because Jeff McNeil is going to be back in a couple of weeks, I don't really think it's the end of the world or it's going to hurt his development much to start the year in the big leagues. And ultimately, I think once, you get to the point where McNeil's back, Acuna will be sent down. I really do believe that. But for now, this was a way to, again, potentially send a little bit of a message. Maybe it was really truthful that they were trying to find another option on the market. Or the final option, Alex Canario was with the Mets in Houston. So by maybe not making that announcement final right away, they were able to delay the decision on Canario and maybe hold back when they expose him to waivers. That's just another thought I had about this. We'll see. We'll see what happens with Canario if the Mets are able to sneak him through waivers. But they brought both of those guys almost to make it an illusion like there was still a decision to be made. But obviously for roster construction purposes, you needed Acuna on this roster because you needed a backup infielder. As much as I can tell you that the Mets don't need a backup shortstop, and when McNeil comes back, I do believe that's the case. I think they can roll with Beatty and McNeil and not have a backup shortstop on the roster because ultimately Lindor is going to start every single game. And the only time you needed a backup shortstop last year was when he got hurt, and very easy to call up Acuna then, or to finish out games, finish out blowouts. Those were the only times when the Mets required a backup shortstop. It was only in blowout situations, or there was the one game where Francisco Lindor had the flu. He gets pulled halfway through the game for Joey Wendell, and the next game, Joey Wendell started the first part of the game, and Lindor came back in and ended up finishing off that game heroically, you might remember. But the point being, the Mets could not have rolled into the season with Canario and just, all right, every single inning of every single game until Jeff McNeil comes back, we're going to roll with Alonso at first, Beatty at second, Lindor at short, and Vientos at third with absolutely no backup option. So they had to carry an infielder. Acuna was always going to make the team unless they made an outside acquisition. Turns out it is official now. So this, again, is your opening day roster for the New York Mets. What we're going to talk about next here is comparing this roster to the one the Mets carried last year in 2024. What a difference a year makes. I think this team is much better than the one that we just saw nearly make it to the World Series, because obviously the roster changed a lot then. So I'd say the World Series or the NLCS roster compared to now, there's one major improvement. But if you look at where the Mets were last year and compare it to where they are now, I think they are starting off in a much better spot. So we're going to go into that in just a minute. First, though, a quick word from our sponsors. The baseball season's in full swing, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best plays for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, Prize Picks keeps every game exciting. For opening day today, I'm playing a couple of new Mets in my lineup. Juan Soto, 1.5 hits plus runs plus RBIs. I'm taking more on that. So if Soto hits a home run, count him up. That would be a hit. That'd be a run. That'd be an RBI. He would blow through that 1.5. If he just gets 2 hits today, there you go. That's locked in. I got Clay Holmes with more than 4 strikeouts, and you have to have a player from 2 different teams in your lineup. You can't just roll with 2 Mets. So I looked at Bobby Witt Jr. He's playing against the Guardians today. 1.5 total bases. Do I think Bobby Witt can get an extra base hit or multiple hits today? I absolutely think he can. So I'm playing those 3 guys together. $20 down to win $100. Set your lineup. It takes less than 60 seconds, and when you win, your payout is quick, safe, and secure. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize picks, run your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site that's made for skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button to help us get closer to our goal of 13,000 subscribers. Also, if you're enjoying the content, hit that like button and leave a comment. Do you think the Mets are better this year on opening day than they were last year? If you do, if you don't, please let me know. Let's talk about it, though. What was the roster like a year ago? Look at the catching situation, Francisco Alvarez and Omar Narvaez. Obviously, Alvarez starts the season this year on the IL. But funny enough, I like the overall state of the catching position for the New York Mets this year more than last year because Omar Narvaez was clearly washed. Now you have Luis Torrens as a much better backup to Francisco Alvarez. And I like Hayden Sanger as your third catcher. It's a great story, a guy that's been in the Mets system for a very long time, a great defensive catcher, and that's the big thing for the Mets. They're always going to have a plus defender behind the dish. First base, no difference, Pete Alonso. Second base, this year it's Brett Beatty instead of Jeff McNeil to start, and Luis Angel Acuna. That's a platoon that I'm going to be interested to watch early on in this season. I think that can be really dynamic. Beatty is coming off a fantastic spring. How will that carry over into the regular season? Hopefully well. He's going to have an opportunity for the first couple of weeks to really make a name for himself, really prove that the changes that he's made to his swing, all the hard work that he put in over the offseason, it's real, it's legit. And if it is, Jeff McNeil is going to come back, and he's not going to be your everyday second baseman. Beatty's going to eat into that time. There's always going to be a way to find spots on the roster for multiple guys. You know, no one's going to be an every single day player outside of your Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, and Pete Alonso. Like those guys are always going to be in there. But at times, a Brandon Nimmo might need a day. At times, you might want to, instead of have Jesse Winker in the DH spot, you might put Mark Vientos at DH, Beatty at third, and early in the season, Acuna at second. When McNeil comes back, it could be McNeil at second, Beatty at third, Vientos at DH. There's a lot of ways the Mets can maneuver this roster. At shortstop last year, it was obviously Lindor, but Zach Short had made the team. At third base, Brett Beatty, Joey Wendell. So you look at the infield situation. Last year, you liked Pete Alonso. You liked Francisco Lindor. In some respects, you liked Jeff McNeil. But the backup options, it was Zach Short and Joey Wendell. And Beatty was not nearly as proven as Mark Vientos is this season. So I think offensively, this lineup is much better than it was a year ago. Defensively, I guess you can quibble with it a little bit. How well will Beatty adjust to playing second base? He made some great plays down the stretch in spring training, so I hope he can handle that position well. What's Vientos going to look like year or two of playing third base at the big league level? There are some questions there, but offensively, I think this team is significantly better than it was a year ago. In the outfield last year on opening day, you had Nimmo, you had Bader, and you had Starling Marte. Tyrone Taylor was your fourth outfielder. Your DH on opening day, you might remember, was DJ Stewart, with JD Martinez still ramping himself up to be good to go. And then an injury really slowed that ramp up process where we didn't see JD Martinez for basically the first month of the season. So it was a lot of DJ Stewart and mixing and matching, and Starling Marte got his DH days on the other side of the platoon there at times. But you look at the outfield in particular, and there was no Juan Soto last year. And that's the biggest difference that a year makes here with the Mets roster. You have Juan Soto in place, and that completely changes the complexion of your lineup. And even the DH situation, like, let's even set aside the DJ Stewart of it and just talk about where JD Martinez was at that point in his career. JD Martinez had some great moments early on with the Mets and was a really good bat. I like Jesse Winker and Starling Marte in a platoon. I think they're going to be just as good as JD Martinez was at his best. And I also like the Mets' ability to be able to cycle other guys through that spot, as I already mentioned, with the potential of DHing Vientos with Beatty at third base. So I just think this is a deeper team than it was last year. I think your young players are much closer to helping you out between Beatty and Acuna, who are already on the roster. Mauricio, who is going to continue to progress rehabbing off of that knee injury. And hopefully he's playing every day at Syracuse in a couple weeks, and he'll be an option at some point. So you have more depth this year, more high-end depth, and then you have a superstar in this lineup that you didn't have a year ago with Juan Soto that just makes everything so much better and should trickle down across the order. So I think offensively, this team is going to be ready to go from jump to be a top 5 offense in baseball. That's how good they can be. Now you look at the rotation last year, when we now know with hindsight the full picture, you see a rotation of Jose Quintana, Luis Severino, Sean Manaea, Adrian Hauser, and Tyler McGill, and you say, man, they had 3 really good pitchers atop that rotation, but really entering the season last year, I don't know if we were as confident in Jose Quintana as we are Clay Holmes right now, but I don't think that we all knew for sure that Quintana, at whatever he was, 36 years old or 35 years old, that he was going to put in a season where he would keep his ERA under 4 and throw over 170 innings. I don't think that was guaranteed. Severino was coming off an awful season. Manaea was coming off a season where he wasn't even in the rotation. So you look at where they were a year ago, and then you compare it to now. Yes, you don't have Manaea to start the season, but you do have Kodai Senga. You have Clay Holmes, who looks to have made this transition to starting very well and seems like a guy with plenty of upside. David Peterson is coming off a great season. I feel very confident about him. Griffin Canning is getting better day after day. He already said, being in the Mets organization, I feel as good about Griffin Canning, if not better, than I did about Adrian Hauser last year. And then Tyler McGill is, a year along in his development, and I think he's a better pitcher than he was a year ago. So while there's been questions about this rotation, I don't think it's in worse shape than it was last year. I think it might be in better shape. And then you look at the bullpen. Last year it was Edwin Diaz, Brooks Raley, Adam Ottavino, Jake Diekman, Jorge Lopez, Drew Smith, Michael Tonkin, and Johan Ramirez. It's crazy to say that of that bullpen, the only guys that would survive the entire season is Edwin Diaz and Adam Ottavino, and Adam Ottavino would not make the playoff rosters. So really, Edwin Diaz from opening day to the playoffs was the only guy that held a roster spot the whole way through. Brooks Raley went down, obviously. Drew Smith went down. Diekman, Lopez, Tonkin, Ramirez, they were all cut. I don't think we're going to see as much turnover with the bullpen this year. Reed Garrett was up very quickly in the season last year and proved himself. I think he's going to be a really nice high leverage arm for you. Ryan Stanek had his moments in the playoffs. We'll see what he does in the regular season this time around. AJ Minter, call that a wash with where Brooks Raley was a year ago. I think Minter has a very long track record of success, particularly in this division. So I feel great about that. Jake Diekman, Danny Young, we'll see. That's very similar, I would say. Diekman, more career success. Danny Young, though, has really good stuff. Who knows? And then I'm very intrigued by Huascar Brazaban and Max Kranick in a way that I don't really know if I was about Tonkin and Ramirez last year. So overall, I think this bullpen's in a better spot. I think David Stearns, with another year under his belt in this organization, has been able to find more arms and just build out further depth, where there's going to always be turnover in that bullpen. But I just feel so much better about the options the Mets can still go to, because Daniel Nunez is not on this team yet, but he will be. Jose Budo is coming off a really nice season. He's in this bullpen now. So that the bullpen's in better shape. I think the rotation is maybe slightly better than it was. And the offense with Juan Soto should be significantly better. So I look at the Mets this season, I think they are much better positioned to not start off as poorly as they did a year ago. But first up is the Houston Astros. I'm going to give you your series preview in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. If you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats that help you feel fuller, longer. Personally, I love the no-shell variety of Wonderful Pistachios, particularly the smoky barbecue. I like the honey roasted as well. I even tried the salt and vinegar the other day. I was a fan of that. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. If you're on the golf course, I like to bring my Wonderful Pistachios. If you're on a road trip or I was on a flight over the weekend, grab my Wonderful Pistachios. It is the snack that I go to first now. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, Wonderful Pistachios has their in-shell options as well for a classic favorite. Get snacking and cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. And now throughout the rest of the season, you will get the lineup graphics sent to your phone every day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. So a series preview here. The Astros have not listed their starting pitchers yet outside of the opening day starter, which is Framber Valdez, although an educated guess would be that Hunter Brown will likely get a start in this series. Spencer Arrighetti could be another guy that would get a start in this series. Both of those guys coming off, essentially breakout years. With Hunter Brown last season, he ended up just becoming great by the end of the season. 3.49 ERA, 170 innings pitched, really good stuff. Big right-hander. He's a guy that can definitely give you problems. Spencer Arrighetti, another guy that can have some really good stuff. Last season, it was a 4.53 ERA and 145 innings, but he struck out over 10.5 batters per 9, and he had a stretch at the end of the year where he was absolutely lights out. And the first starter, again, that you're going up against today is Framber Valdez, a left-handed starter who is pitching in a contract year. We'll see if he stays with the Astros all year. He should, assuming that, the Astros are competing atop this division. But there's going to be a lot of attention on Framber. He's been as consistent of a starting pitcher that you'll find in Major League Baseball. Career 3.30 ERA last year, 2.91 in 28 starts. The Mets, with a lefty on the mound, you're going to see the right-handed lineup. So I would expect that Luis Angel Acuna is in there at second base. I would expect that Starling Marte is your DH. You're obviously going to always see Nimmo and Soto out there. And I would think Jose Siri is going to be the opening day starter in center field. And then around the horn, we know it's going to be Alonso again, probably Acuna, Lindor, and then Vientos over at third base with Terrens, the likely opening day starter behind the dish. You look at how the Astros are going to line it up. It'll be very interesting to see. This is a new lineup for the Astros. No Alex Bregman for the first time since whatever it was, 2015, that he made his debut. You have Jose Altuve, longtime second baseman, moving over to left field. So that'll be interesting. You look at their lineup, it'll be Altuve, probably Isaac Paredes, Yordan Alvarez, Christian Walker, and Yainer Diaz as their 1 through 5. All really good hitters. Outside of Yordan, all right-handed. This entire lineup basically is right-handed, which is why David Peterson is not making a start in this series, because you have a team that has a switch hitting catcher in Victor Carantini. That's their backup catcher. They have Yordan, and that's it. Every other bat that has made this roster is right-handed. So that is just an interesting thing to note. Who's going to start at second base? Will it be Mauricio Dubon, or will it be Brendan Rodgers, who made the team as a non-roster invite? We'll see. Both those guys really good defensively. Neither one of them that great of a hitter. The big wild card for the Astros is going to be their new right fielder, Cam Smith. They made a big trade over the offseason. They sent Kyle Tucker to the Cubs for Isaac Paredes, their new third baseman, who's going to replace Alex Bregman, and Cam Smith, top prospect. Now, Cam Smith was not expected to make this team, but he went out and had a fantastic spring training where he hit 342, got on base at a 419 clip, slugged at a 711 clip, hit 4 home runs, was absolutely outstanding with the bat. A guy that hits the ball ridiculously hard, great athlete. Again, he's 22 years old. He was the 14th overall pick by the Cubs in last year's draft out of Florida State, and now skyrockets right up to the big leagues. He's going to learn a new position in right field. He's got a strong arm, really good athlete. He'll probably figure it out. But there's a hole the Mets could exploit in this series. They have 2 outfielders who are new to playing outfield in both of the corners. Now, in center field, they're probably going to lean defense, I would imagine. So we'll see. If they wanted to, they could start Chas McCormick because he is the better hitter of the two, although he's coming off a down season. I imagine they're just going to lean glove because of bat first guys in each corner. So Jake Myers, probably their opening day center fielder, to try to cover up some ground. We'll see how Cam Smith adjusts to playing right. I think that's going to be a little bit better than Altuve. Altuve looked pretty shaky out in left field early on in spring. I think he'll figure it out. I certainly think that he's a good enough athlete to be able to play a fine left field, and he was not a good second baseman anymore. Last year, his metrics are pretty atrocious at second base. I'll pull him up now real quick. He was at second last year, minus 13 defensive runs saved, minus 8 outs above average. That's pretty brutal. So I think their thought is move him out to left. Should be a little bit better. If it was my team, I'd still almost wonder just playing Yordan in left instead of Altuve and DHing Altuve, because Yordan is still, even though he's not great, he's still an outfielder. But I think Altuve will figure it out eventually. That is something the Mets can try to exploit, though, in this series. Not that you're going to target those guys necessarily, but it is a benefit the Mets might be able to run into, where they might get an extra out or two, especially when a ball hits the left field. So that's the lineup for the Astros. That they still have a solid bullpen. This is a team that's going to be right atop the AL West, but I think the Mets can certainly go out here and play spoiler in Houston and win a couple of games. Last year, Juan Soto had a very great open to his season playing against the Astros in Houston. Remember the Yankees? I think they swept a 4-game set last year. And I'm trying to now pull up really quickly what happened in that first game, because if I remember correctly, Juan Soto threw out a runner at the plate. He had a home run, I believe. He had a crazy series. I can't remember exactly when all of that went down, but I know he did have a monster first series for the Yankees. And I expect him to do the same thing for the Mets here. This is his opportunity to make another good first impression. He did that in spring training. Now he gets a chance to do that on a much bigger stage for opening day, and it's going to be absolutely thrilling to watch, to see what Juan Soto has in store, see what the Mets have in store. Clay Holmes, your opening day starter, what's that going to look like? I think he's going to be very good. I really do. I think I'm more concerned about Clay Holmes a couple months into the season than I am to start. I think he's going to be really dynamic to open up this year. I'm excited to see what it looks like across a full regular season start. The Mets will play first pitch 4:10 today. Obviously, it's on SNY. Your coverage will start an hour before that. So You'll want to check out all of the pregame festivities and everything like that. And then after the game, I plan to go live on YouTube here with Locked On Mets. So you'll get a post-game stream from me. Also, I want to let you know throughout the season, we will have the postcasts that are back. At the end of last year, you might recall there was a postcast as well as I would do post-game streams at times. So the postcast is now going to be streamed on the Locked On Mets YouTube channel. We can actually run 2 streams at once. So you'll see the different imaging for a postcast and for my show. If it doesn't have postcast written in bold in the title, then it's a show hosted by me. If it's a postcast, it'll have Mets postcast right in the front of your title in all caps. That's going to be on the audio feed and the YouTube channel. That's going to be hosted by Chris. And if it's a show by me, again, you're not going to see that. It's going to be your typical imaging, the same thumbnails that you're used to on YouTube. If it's a postcast, it's a different thumbnail. So you should be able to differentiate between the two. But this just gives you more Mets coverage throughout the season because I'm not going to do a live show after every single game. So Chris will be there for you after every single game. When Chris is not available throughout the season, those are the days where I will typically be going out of my way to make sure I do a post-game stream so that every single game, if you want a post-game show streaming on YouTube, you can go to the Locked On Mets YouTube channel and find one. So if you don't want to miss out on any of that content, you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening, open up your YouTube app, subscribe to the Locked On Mets channel to get all of that coverage. Hit the notification bell, and you'll know when one of us is going live. If you're listening on the audio side, you don't want to miss out on any shows throughout the season. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. I cannot wait to cover this 2025 season for you all 7 days a week, the whole way through the season. So looking forward to it. Tomorrow's show after the stream, I am going to do my minor league bold predictions as the minor league season is going to kick off. So make sure you check out that show as well. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Now, for your second watch, head over to YouTube, check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel. Covers everything in the world of sports. Talking about Locked On Sports today with our local experts from each team, league-wide experts for each league. Find Locked On Sports today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.